I was 8 months pregnant when my mother-in-law shoved me down 14 stairs because she thought my baby might be disabled. I hit the landing at the bottom and saw my husband frozen at the top. He'd watched the whole thing. His mother met his eyes and said, "Better now than raising a disabled child." I lay there feeling something warm spreading beneath me and wondered if she'd just killed my daughter. My husband finally moved. He ran down the stairs, but I couldn't tell if he was coming to help me or to stop me from screaming. His mother stayed at the top and smoothed her cardigan like she'd just finished folding laundry. The EMTs arrived 9 minutes later. I'd memorized the clock on the wall while David called 911 because I needed something to focus on besides the cramping. His mother had already left through the back door. One of the paramedics asked what happened, and David opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I said she pushed me. I said it again louder when the paramedic wrote "accidental fall" on his clipboard. David finally spoke. He said my mother pushed her. I watched him say it. His face looked like he was confessing to murder. The paramedic stopped writing and called someone on his radio. I heard the words "police" and "domestic violence" and "possible assault on pregnant victim." My mother-in-law's voice echoed in my head. Better now than raising a disabled child. I knew the hospital would ask questions. I had no idea what she'd already planned. The emergency room doctor used the word abruption, and my entire body went cold. Placental abruption. The placenta was separating from my uterus, and my baby wasn't getting enough oxygen. They hooked me up to monitors, and I watched the numbers flicker while a nurse injected something into my IV. Steroid shots for the baby's lungs in case they had to deliver early. The doctor said we needed 72 hours of observation. 3 days to make sure my daughter's heartbeat stayed strong and the bleeding stopped. I asked if she would be okay, and he said we're monitoring closely. That wasn't an answer, but it was all I was getting. David sat in the chair next to my bed with his head in his hands. A police officer came in around midnight and asked me to describe what happened. I told her about the stairs and the shove and what Patricia said afterward. The officer wrote everything down and asked if David witnessed it. He lifted his head and looked at me. Then he looked at the officer and said yes. He said my mother pushed Jessica down the stairs on purpose. His voice cracked on the word purpose. The officer asked him to repeat it for her recording device, and he did. She left after 20 minutes and said a detective would follow up. David reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. I asked him why he didn't stop her, why he just stood there and watched his mother try to kill our baby. He said he froze. He said he couldn't process what he was seeing. I told him his mother processed it just fine, and she'd probably been planning it for weeks. He looked at me like I'd slapped him, but he didn't argue. We both knew I was right. Patricia showed up at the hospital the next morning. I heard her voice at the nurse's station demanding to see her son and grandchild. The charge nurse told her visiting hours didn't start until 10 and she needed to wait in the lobby. Patricia raised her voice. She said, "I did what needed to be done, and that family should understand difficult choices." The nurse asked her to repeat that, and Patricia said it again, louder. She said she couldn't stand by and watch her son raise a disabled child when prevention was still possible. I pressed the call button. The nurse came in, and I told her that woman tried to kill my baby, and I wanted her removed from the building. The nurse nodded and left. 2 security guards escorted Patricia out 3 minutes later while she shouted about her rights as a grandmother. David stood at the window watching them drag her across the parking lot. He turned to me and said, "She's lost her mind. I told him she knew exactly what she was doing, and she just confessed to a nurse on a recorded floor. Hospital security cameras caught everything, including audio." The charge nurse came back an hour later with a hospital administrator and a legal representative. They asked if I wanted to press charges for the verbal threats Patricia made. I said yes. They gave me paperwork and explained the hospital would be filing their own report about the incident. David sat down hard in the chair. He said, "This is really happening." I asked him what he thought was going to happen when his mother shoved a pregnant woman down the stairs. He didn't have an answer. He just stared at his phone like it might tell him what to do. A detective called that afternoon. Detective Raymond Chen from the Family Crimes Unit. He said he'd reviewed the initial police report and the hospital's incident documentation. He wanted to meet with David and me separately to get full statements. David went first. He was gone for 45 minutes, and when he came back, his eyes were red. Detective Chen came to my room next and asked me to walk him through everything starting from the morning of the incident. I told him Patricia had been obsessed with genetic testing throughout my pregnancy. She kept sending me articles about prenatal screening and how many conditions could be detected early. She never said what she thought I should do with that information, but the implication was clear. Detective Chen wrote everything down. He asked if I had any of those articles saved. I pulled up my email on my phone and forwarded him 6 months' worth of messages, links to disability burden statistics, termination procedure explanations, support groups for parents who chose not to continue pregnancies. He looked at the emails for a long time. Then he asked if Patricia had ever said anything directly about wanting me to terminate. I told him about the comment she made at a family dinner when I was 5 months along. She'd said, "Some burdens are preventable if you're willing to make hard choices." David's brother had been there, his sister Lauren, too. Detective Chen asked if they would be willing to confirm that statement. I said I didn't know, but Lauren had looked uncomfortable when Patricia said it. She might remember. The detective closed his notebook. He said he was going to need to search Patricia's home and computer. He asked if David knew where she kept personal files. David told him she had a home office with filing cabinets and a desktop computer she used daily. Detective Chen left and said he'd be in touch. David paced the room after he was gone. He said his mother was going to be arrested and his family would never forgive him. I asked him if he wanted our daughter to grow up knowing her grandmother tried to murder her. He stopped pacing, but he didn't answer. David went to his mother's house 2 days later with Detective Chen and a search warrant. I was still in the hospital on bed rest when he called me. His voice sounded hollow. He said they found a folder in her desk drawer labeled Genetic Conditions Family Planning Resources. Inside were printouts about late-term miscarriage causes, articles on placental abruption triggers, a handwritten list of stairs in our house with the second-floor landing circled 3 times. Detective Chen had already bagged it as evidence. I asked David what else was in the folder. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said there were statistics on lifetime care costs for children with developmental delays, printouts from eugenic theory websites, a pamphlet about selective termination that she'd highlighted in yellow marker. My hands started shaking. I asked him how long she'd been planning this. He said some of the articles were dated from 6 months ago. Right after I'd refused to do the amniocentesis she kept pushing me to get. She'd been researching ways to end my pregnancy since the 2nd trimester. Detective Chen took David's computer too. He said they needed to check browser history and deleted files. David told me his mother had looked up how to cause miscarriage without detection 3 days before she pushed me. The search was time-stamped at 2 in the morning. She'd also searched legal consequences, pregnancy harm, and placental abruption symptoms. Detective Chen said it showed premeditation. This wasn't a moment of anger or a tragic accident like her lawyer was claiming. She'd planned it and researched it and waited for the right opportunity. David's sister Lauren called me that night. She said the family was splitting down the middle. Their brother thought Patricia was being railroaded, and David was betraying his own mother. Their father wasn't speaking to anyone. Lauren said she believed me, but she didn't know if she could testify against Patricia in court. I told her I understood. Then I asked her about the family dinner when Patricia made the comment about preventable burdens. Lauren was quiet. She said she remembered. She said Patricia had looked directly at me when she said it and smiled. 2 weeks later, Lauren called again. There'd been another family dinner, and Patricia had doubled down. She'd told everyone they would thank her someday when they weren't sacrificing their lives for a vegetable. Lauren had recorded the whole thing on her phone. She sent the audio file to Detective Chen the next morning. I listened to it once and felt sick. Patricia's voice was calm and certain. She sounded like she was discussing meal planning, not attempted murder. The district attorney called me 3 days after that. Deputy DA Michelle Zhao. She said they were upgrading the charges to attempted murder of an unborn child. It required proof of specific intent, which they now had, thanks to the search history and Lauren's recording. I asked what that meant for sentencing. She said if convicted, Patricia could face 8 to 12 years in state prison. I thought about my daughter in the NICU 2 floors down, about the monitors tracking her breathing in her feeding tube, about how she almost didn't exist because my mother-in-law decided she wasn't worth keeping. I told Deputy DA Zhao to throw the book at her. She said that's exactly what we're planning to do. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Patricia's bail was set at $50,000 and her lawyer was already filing motions to get the charges reduced. David came to the hospital that night and said his mother posted bail. She was out. I asked if she'd tried to contact him and he said no, just her lawyer sending paperwork about the case. He looked exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. I asked him if he was going to testify against her. He sat down and put his head in his hands again. He said yes. He said he had to because what she did was unforgivable. But his voice shook when he said it, and I knew this was destroying him. Patricia gave an interview outside the courthouse after her bail hearing. A local news crew caught her on the steps and she stopped to talk. She said she was trying to help her son avoid a lifetime of burden. That sometimes love means making impossible choices. The video went viral. My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some supported me. Others said I was tearing a family apart over an accident. I stopped reading them after the fifth person called me vindictive. Deputy D.A. Zhao called and said the interview was a gift. Patricia had just admitted motive on camera to thousands of people. Her lawyer was probably having a breakdown trying to control the damage. I asked if it would help the case, and she said it made conviction almost guaranteed. The prosecution started building their witness list. They found David's cousin Amy, whose autistic son Patricia had called a preventable tragedy at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Amy said Patricia had cornered her in the kitchen and told her genetic screening existed for a reason, that some suffering could be avoided with proper planning. Amy agreed to testify about the pattern. She said Patricia had been pushing eugenic ideology on the family for years, but everyone ignored it because she was otherwise helpful, until she decided helping meant shoving me down the stairs. Patricia's lawyer changed strategies. He filed a motion claiming diminished capacity, said his client had experienced a mental break and wasn't in control of her actions. The judge scheduled a psychiatric evaluation for 3 weeks out. I went into labor at 36 weeks, 4 weeks early. The doctor said it was stress-induced and my body couldn't take the constant cortisol anymore. They prepped me for an emergency C-section while David called his family to tell them the baby was coming. His brother didn't answer. His father hung up. Lauren said she'd be there in 20 minutes. I didn't care who came. I just wanted my daughter out safely. Sophia was born at 4 pounds 11 ounces. They took her straight to the NICU because her lungs weren't fully developed. I didn't get to hold her. Just saw a glimpse of dark hair before they wheeled her away in an incubator. David stood next to my bed and cried. He said she's so small. I told him she's alive and that's what matters, that his mother failed and our daughter was here and breathing. He nodded but kept crying. The NICU doctors said Sophia would need 2 weeks minimum, maybe 3 depending on how her lungs progressed. They had her on oxygen and monitors tracking every breath. I sat in a wheelchair next to her incubator and put my hand through the port to touch her fingers. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, no signs of any genetic conditions, no developmental delays, no disabilities. Just a premature baby who needed time to grow. Everything Patricia had tried to prevent didn't exist. I took a photo of Sophia sleeping in her incubator, sent it to Deputy D.A. Zhao with a message. This is who she tried to kill. Use it however you need to. She responded immediately. We will. Patricia's psychiatric evaluation came back inconclusive. The psychologist said she showed no signs of psychosis or delusional thinking. She understood right from wrong. She just believed her choice was morally justified. The judge denied the diminished capacity defense. The trial date was set for 8 weeks out. Sophia came home from the NICU after 19 days. She was up to 5 pounds and breathing on her own. I brought her to every pretrial meeting with Deputy D.A. Zhao. Wanted the prosecution team to remember what they were fighting for. The trial started on a Tuesday in September. The courtroom was packed. David's family sat on opposite sides like a wedding gone wrong, his brother and father on Patricia's side, Lauren sitting with us. The divide was so clean it looked staged. David testified first. The prosecutor asked him to describe what he saw on the stairs. He said he watched his mother place both hands on Jessica's back and shove with full force, that Jessica never slipped or lost balance. She was pushed. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined him, asked if he loved his mother. David said yes, asked if he wanted to see her in prison. David said no, but she tried to kill my daughter. His voice broke. The jury watched him cry on the stand. Amy testified next about the Thanksgiving comment, about Patricia's pattern of viewing disabled children as burdens that should have been prevented. Patricia's lawyer objected 3 times, but the judge allowed it. Pattern evidence of eugenic belief was relevant to motive. The hospital charge nurse took the stand after lunch. She played the audio recording of Patricia saying, "I did what needed to be done at the nurse's station." You could hear it clearly, Patricia's voice calm and certain. The jury leaned forward to listen. Deputy D.A. Zhao played Lauren's recording next, Patricia saying they'd all thank her when they weren't sacrificing their lives for a vegetable. Two jurors looked visibly upset. One older woman put her hand over her mouth. Patricia sat perfectly still at the defense table. The prosecutor entered the search history and evidence: how to cause miscarriage without detection, legal consequences, pregnancy harm, placental abruption symptoms. All searched at 2:17 in the morning, 3 days before the push. The timestamps were projected on a screen for the jury. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue the searches were academic research, that his client was worried about her daughter-in-law's health and trying to understand risks. Deputy D.A. Zhao asked why she circled the stairs in her house on a handwritten diagram. The lawyer had no answer. During cross-examination, the prosecutor asked Patricia directly, "Do you regret your actions?" Patricia looked at the jury and said, "I regret failing." The courtroom went silent. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, but it was too late. The judge held her in contempt. Had her removed from the courtroom while the jury was still present. Patricia shouted that someone had to protect the bloodline as security dragged her out. David put his head down on the table in front of him. His brother walked out and didn't come back. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 17 minutes. I counted every minute sitting in the hallway holding Sophia. She was 3 months old now and meeting every milestone, rolling over, tracking objects with her eyes, smiling at sounds, completely healthy. They came back with a verdict at 6:42 in the evening, guilty on assault with intent to harm an unborn child. The attempted murder charge was partially sustained as aggravated assault. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks out. Patricia was remanded to custody immediately. No more bail. She'd violated the conditions by making public statements, and the contempt charge sealed it. They took her out in handcuffs while she stared at David like he'd murdered her. The sentencing hearing was worse than the trial. Victim impact statements. I read mine holding Sophia on my hip. Described the warm, spreading feeling at the bottom of the stairs, the steroid shots, the NICU, the fear that my daughter wouldn't survive because her grandmother decided she wasn't worth keeping. Deputy D.A. Zhao submitted the photo I'd sent her, Sophia at 3 months old in the yellow dress, healthy, alert, perfect. The prosecutor had it blown up on a poster board, said, "This is who the defendant tried to kill. This is what she called a preventable burden." Patricia saw the photo and collapsed, just dropped in her chair like someone cut her strings. Her lawyer helped her up, but she kept staring at the image, at her granddaughter who existed and thrived despite everything she'd done to prevent it. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in state prison, eligible for parole after 5, permanent restraining order for me and Sophia, no contact allowed even after release without court approval. Patricia didn't react, just sat there staring at nothing. David's father left without speaking to us. His brother sent a text later calling David a traitor. Lauren hugged me in the parking lot and said she was sorry it came to this. I told her I wasn't. Patricia made her choice. Now she was living with it. Sophia is 3 years old now. She's in preschool and obsessed with dinosaurs. Her favorite is the Triceratops because it has 3 horns and she's 3 years old. The logic is airtight according to her. She's met every developmental milestone early. Talked at 10 months, walked at 11, no genetic conditions, no disabilities, no delays, just a healthy kid who asks why about everything and refuses to wear anything that isn't purple. Patricia served 5 years and was released on parole in 2023. She moved to Arizona to live with David's brother. The restraining order is still active. She's never attempted contact, and we've never sought it. I check the registry every few months to make sure she's still out of state. David and I are still married. Barely. We did 2 years of intensive couples therapy, and he's still seeing someone individually. He hasn't spoken to his mother since the sentencing, hasn't spoken to his father or brother either. Lauren is the only family he has left. He struggles with it. Some days he's fine. Other days I find him staring at nothing, and I know he's thinking about his mother in prison or about the stairs or about how close we came to losing Sophia. The therapy helps, but it doesn't erase what happened. Sophia asks why she only has 1 grandma. My mother visits twice a month and spoils her rotten. But Sophia's noticed other kids have 2 sets of grandparents and she only has 1. She's too young to understand the real answer. Someday I'll tell her the truth, that her other grandmother tried to kill her before she was born because she thought Sophia might be disabled, that her grandmother believed some lives weren't worth living and decided to make that choice for all of us. For now, I just hold her tighter. Tell her some families are smaller and that's okay. She accepts it because she's 3 and her biggest concern is whether we're having chicken nuggets or mac and cheese for dinner. But the questions will get harder as she gets older. I still have nightmares about the stairs, about the feeling of falling and hitting the landing, about the warmth spreading beneath me. I wake up and check on Sophia even though she's fine, even though she's sleeping peacefully in her purple pajamas surrounded by stuffed dinosaurs. David asked me once if I forgive his mother. I said no. He asked if I ever will. I said I don't know. Some things are too big for forgiveness. She didn't just try to hurt me, she tried to erase our daughter from existence because she didn't meet some imaginary standard of acceptable. Sophia is perfect, not despite anything, just perfect. And she's here, and she's thriving, and her grandmother is sitting in a parole office in Arizona knowing she threw away everything for a belief system that was wrong from the start. That's not karma, that's just consequence. And sometimes consequence is enough. Thanks for listening. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Daily Karma Reads. New story every day. Take care of yourself.